What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex. I am joined by Degenerate Jay. Jay, in this video, we're going to be talking... Now, there's really no spoilers. I guess I should probably start off by saying that. We don't really even need to talk about Miles Morales at all, other than the fact that I guess it happened. It's real, right? Miles is a character in this world. But I do want to talk a little bit about Spider-Man 2. I've had a few videos on the channel over the last week or so talking about, where do they go from here? What's really the path? How often do they make these games? How many games are they going to make? And, a question people have asked quite often, right, is the Venom stuff, right? How they introduced that, even in terms of Peter. But also a question I want to know, especially because Miles became so popular. And we don't know the sales figures yet of Miles. Obviously, we know the PS4 version of Spider-Man sold actually, when we're recording this, the news is 20 million, which is absolutely amazing. But, would they actually go so far as to kill Peter off? So that's kind of the general thing I want to talk about. But before I do that, again, to plug Jay's channel, Jay's talked about Miles for a very long time, just as long as me. If you guys haven't already subscribed there, make sure you do. His channel, his second channel, will be in the description below, as well as a pinned comment. So will my stuff. Obviously, make sure you guys are subbed here, have the bell on, all that good stuff. Most times the bell won't even show because I do too many videos each day. But Jay, thank you so much for being on this video.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Yeah, Miles is a very interesting topic. And like you said, we won't really get into Miles very much here or the ending at all. We're really just talking about Peter, and he doesn't really have much of a part in that game anyways.
Right. Yeah, I don't want to hear that we're spoiling anything because we just flat out aren't. So, it's interesting because obviously Into the Spider-Verse did some stuff. I think we should be able to spoil a movie, right? That's a couple years old at this point. I mean, obviously It did things. It will want to introduce people to Miles in general, right? But the general idea is, could these games ever come to the point where they eliminate Peter Parker, where they kill Peter off? So, I want to throw it to Jay. I have my own opinions, but I want to hear what Jay says first. So, Jay, what do you think? Maybe not in Spider-Man 2, but do you think it ever becomes a thing where, because Miles is this game was probably a hit, do they do sequels to those games? I've actually talked about that in the past, but as these games go on, do you ever get to a point where it's like, yeah, we could kill Peter off. It'd be an emotional thing. It would be a way of wrapping up a character, like a story device. Do you think that could ever happen?
Certainly could. I think that there's a few things to do before that as well, because the first Spider-Man game does introduce possible elements of the Superior Spider-Man arc at some time in the future. The thing with the original is that it sort of sets up a Doc Ock being unable to move at a certain point, which was a big key factor of Superior Spider-Man, and then transferring his consciousness into Peter Parker and having a game like that. So it kind of depends on where you want to go with this. Obviously, Doc Ock was made a very sympathetic character in the first game. So I think that what we will see eventually, unless they don't want to go this way, which is possible, but they do have building blocks for it, is I think that we will see another sequel with Peter, with Miles tied into it as well, and the black suit, which I think could strain the relationship of Peter and Miles because of what it does to Peter. I could also very easily see after that another Miles spinoff, and then I could see something like a Superior game where maybe you either kill off Peter Parker through that way of bringing Doc Ock into Peter Parker, or maybe it's sort of a fake out where it's for the whole game you basically play as Doc Ock Spider-Man, then in the end you get Peter back. I see Peter dying in years, but I do see it happening, because I think that the whole point of Miles is to be like, there's more Spider-Man outside of Peter Parker. I think that this is an issue as well that Sony and Insomniac and these other companies are finding with their characters. So we talk about this a lot. What is Kingdom Hearts? Kingdom Hearts is Sora in a lot of ways. What happens if we don't have that character? I don't know. Where do we go? You can see that as well, even with the MCU. The MCU, in a lot of ways, what was the heart of it? Iron Man. Where do we go without him? Well, we keep bringing him up. Okay, well, when can we not do that anymore? Master Chief with Halo. What is Halo without Master Chief? It's just not existent, really. There's two games.
You can't do it.
They can't figure out how to do that. And I think that these companies, I will say, especially with Sony, they're figuring out what a legacy hero or a legacy character is the right way. The idea of, well, Miles is very young, Peter's in his mid-20s, maybe Peter dies by the time he's 30 or something like that as well, and Miles carries the torch. What's up with Atreus and Kratos? Well, we're setting up Atreus in a way where maybe eventually he can take the torch and continue this franchise without it having to be Kratos. And I think that what they're trying to do is essentially the thing that Gears of War failed a little bit to do, which is introduce a new generation before they can't.
Right.
Introduce new characters that they can build into the story. Because a big problem with Miles in the Ultimate comics, as much as I like him, is that he was brought in at the very, very end of Peter Parker's life. They barely even meet, really. They don't really even meet before Peter dies in the Ultimate comics, and then it just becomes Miles. And so it seems like this and Spider-Verse, they're trying to fix that and build him organically into this universe before they would move on from Peter. And I think that it sets up the possibility to continue this franchise and, like I said, many of the other Sony franchises with new characters while still making them interesting and tying them into previous characters so that past fans have a big tie to it and new people can come in. Like, let's say there's a God of War in 5 years with only Atreus. Well, new fans could jump in with Atreus, but old fans have all that old story.
Right.
And I think it's trying to appeal to both.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, movies try it all the time, and a lot of movies actually fail. Very, very few movies, I'd say, successfully do the. I mean, one of my favorites of Scream, right, is trying to right now. So you have Pirates of the Caribbean, another fan favorite of mine. But you're right. You have these games that I think Sony, to what you said, is actually the best at doing it. The issue with Microsoft and Bungie / 343 is that it's too late. You have to do Master Chief, and Gears has really not been able to put together a good enough story without the original, basically the original cast, the original character carrying it through. Sony has actually done it, I would say, the best that you can. Nathan Drake is the best example, right? Does not seem like he will, even if he's in the next Uncharted, he would never be the main character, which some people would be mad about. I'd maybe be disappointed. Like, I'd want to see him, but I understand from a story perspective, you gotta let these characters go. God of War, like you said, they were doing it really well, and you're actually seeing that. Uncharted's done. We saw that play out. On God of War, we're seeing play out literally in real time, that they're passing it over to Atreus right now. So, for Spider-Man, I think it's the same thing. I'm not... For any other franchise or any other publisher, I would probably be very worried about the just, pumping these things out. And you could even be a little worried about this because you had 2018 and 2 years later, now you have a spin-off game, then you'll have Spider-Man 2. So it's like, how many games are we expecting from Insomniac? I'm not all that worried. I think that they... whether it's their own management or whether it's Sony watching over them, they are aware, whatever it is, they're aware that they know they can't overkill it, that everything has a life cycle, and once you reach the end of that, the natural end to a story or a character or whatever, it's done. And you can, and I think what gives them confidence is they've done it before, right? Or it's been proven that, hey, Naughty Dog can make The Last of Us. They literally came out with that, they came up with that on their own, and they had Uncharted. So they're able, when The Last of Us ends, when Ellie's story's over, they'll make a new game, and I'm sure that will be fine. You know what I mean? So Insomniac themselves, Sunset Overdrive, Resistance, one of my absolute favorite games, they've done it before. Now, neither of those games actually sold anything, but they've always been very steady in their quality. So when Spider-Man is done, I'm not even saying that. The issue, I think, with Spider-Man to me is we are going to get a lot of games. It just won't all be Peter. We'll get games without him. But like Jay said, I think that's generally where I lie. I don't think we're seeing Peter going to be killed off. I think it's possible, and I think there are people out there that think that / want that. I mean, the issue is he's been Spider-Man for so long. Even though we've only been with him for one game, he's been Spider-Man for 8 years now. So how long do you keep that up, right? He's probably closer to, ending it. Like, they're closer to ending his character than maybe even we think, just because the backstory is he has been around for so long. So I think it's definitely possible. But yeah, I think there's definitely more to set up. I really think a trilogy makes the most sense. You give us 3 games, end it at 3, whether he dies or not. You end him, and then you could just do spin-off games, and you make them a little less, I would say, often, right? You don't want to I mean, people would want a Spider-Man game every 2 years, but eventually they will die down. They're not always going to sell 20 million units. They're not always going to sell systems, PS4, PS5s. So that would be my closing stuff. Anything you want to say, Jay?
No, I think that's very true. I think that it depends on how long they want to push out Peter Parker's story, how resistant people would be to him going away. But I do think there's several storylines that should be tackled before he's gone, like the symbiote suit, the black suit, and also maybe even Superior. I know I'm in the minority for liking that, but they've already set it up in a lot of ways, so I don't see why they wouldn't go into that. It would be just kind of a dropped story thread if they did that, or a red herring, which would be odd. But I think if you don't tie up both of those stories and basically work Miles up into a full Spider-Man, which he's getting close to now, you will have a bit of a problem transitioning on. Miles needs to be a little bit older, I think, and Peter Parker needs to be a little bit closer to his 30s with a few iconic storylines wrapped up before we can move on from him. And I know there will be resistance, but Peter will be back for sure, even if he does pass in a new franchise eventually. The Insomniac one will not go forever. Spider-Man is like Batman. They have found that this is an eternal character
Yeah.
that they can, for better or worse, make games and movies on forever, and people will buy them.
Right. Totally. So let us know in the comments below, guys. What do you think? Do you think they'll ever kill off Peter? Do you think it'll be in Spider-Man 2? How many games do you think Insomniac will make? All that stuff, let us know in the comments below. As always, make sure you guys are subscribed to this channel. Hit the bell icon. I have a Twitter. I have a Discord. I have a second channel. If you guys want to check any of those out, they are in the description below. Jay's channel, same thing, will be in a link in the description, as well as a pinned comment. He's got his main channel, second channel. Always an absolute pleasure recording with you, Jay. You've talked about Miles quite a bit as well, so it's not like Jay has never talked about this before. Again, I encourage you guys to check his channel out. And again, Jay, thank you so much for being on.
Hey, thanks for having me, dude. I always appreciate it. I love working with you, and there's plenty more to come.
Absolutely. So let us know what you guys think in the comments, and we'll see you all on the next video.